we tend to remove ourselves and not see and look and see what's visually going down to the next stage. So maybe to do more partnerships with people that they want to sell to, as well as people that supply to them. How do they make some efficiencies? How do they do more collaboration so they're not spinning their wheels? How do they use more resources like CONNSTEP, like CBIA to tap in to say, here's the value that I get from these organizations. That's what we're there for. I guess some thinking out of the box.
Hey, it's Ari Santiago, President, CEO of IT Direct. Welcome to another exciting edition of the Made in America podcast. Today's a really special day. We're back to a live edition. I'm so excited. A little bit of a new studio here at the office, but same great content, same great podcast. Today, I'm really pleased to have Bonnie Del Conte, President of CONNSTEP. Bonnie, thank you so much for coming into our socially distant studio and being our first live guest.
Thank you. Honored to be the first and happy to be here, Ari. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And Bonnie, listen, it's the Made in America podcast. So we're going to start off with the same two questions. What do you make and why do you make it?
Well, CONNSTEP does not produce anything, but we help our manufacturers who do produce product here in the state of Connecticut with process improvement, any tool that will make them more competitive to remain in business and be profitable here.
That's fantastic and super important, right? Always, and maybe even more so today in the competitive landscape. For those people that don't know, we did do a recording just before kind of COVID, which has a lot of background about you and CONNSTEP. So I'm not going to try and retread all of that, but just a little bit, maybe you could talk about for manufacturers that don't know, who calls CONNSTEP and why do they make that phone call?
Sure. Our organization has been around since the early 90s. We're part of NIST MEP on a federal level. And you'd call on us if you were a small to medium-sized manufacturer for any type of a problem. You want help with quality. You want help with plant layout and design. You want help with supervisory training. You want to get things out quicker, better, more efficient, and certainly quality is a number one aspect in the marketplace today. Without quality, you have defects, you have returns, and it eats into your costs. So anything to help that bottom line as well as top line growth too with new markets and especially today, Industry 4.0 and technology.
That's really exciting. So let's talk a little about just specifically kind of what we're living through. I mean, here we are, sitting just about in July, sort of more in what we're calling the abnormalcy phase of COVID. But let's just back up a little bit. What has CONNSTEP seen and what has CONNSTEP been doing related to manufacturing in Connecticut since that middle of March when things really kind of took a turn?
Sure. And I think that was, right after I had left here and then the world seemed to shut down. And fortunately or unfortunately for our manufacturers, they did not. They were all deemed essential. So they all opened up with this pandemic with a lot of questions, as you can imagine. So, as businesses have re-entered in the past, couple of weeks, everybody's got a feel of what's going on. So they were sort of out there in the cold. So we felt that it was really important that we would help them with whatever they needed to do. We looked at it in three phases of help them respond to them, first of all, and our first responders, as well as manufacturers, and then help them recover. And hopefully when we get out of this, how they will thrive and grow out of it. So sort of a three-prong approach. What we did internally, a lot of our projects got postponed, not canceled, but delayed and pushed off. Certainly, you can imagine that it was, wanting to remain in the supply chain, get their products out the door. So during that, our team sort of retooled internally. We broke into teams and said, what can we do to help them and plan on some new techniques as they come out. We also, in combination with CBIA, who's our affiliate, we built a website for the state, Connecticut COVIDresponse.org, and we matched, first of all, just people that needed PPP for first responders and medical assistants, who we could match them up and find PPE for them. We also had manufacturers sign up that presently were not making PPE that felt they could retool very quickly and help with the PPE production and capacity. We actually had probably 50 companies that were willing to do that right away. So we helped them retool, realign things inside, whether that be layout or design, so they could, if they were making XYZ, now they could make a mask or a gown. They could sew differently. If they were making airplane seats, now they were making gowns or another essential supply. So we did that. We also partnered with the state of Connecticut, with the governor's office, with the first responders, emergency medical teams, and delivered masks. 500,000 masks that were provided by the state came through our website, and then we worked with the local chambers in all our districts to deliver them to manufacturers. Then we did that for non-manufacturers as well. And then lastly, we were delivering infrared thermometers as they came out, which, when that happened, the first day, 8,000 people. So we've probably since then have had over 100,000 hits on our site and people have signing up. So I think we've covered a lot of ground in the past 3 months with doing something that is very different from our organization, but something that we felt was really important. If we couldn't get in, how could we help them from afar to make sure that they were able to open up and stay in business when they were deemed essential?
How many people does CONNSTEP have?
We're just under 30 people.
And so approximately how many manufacturers do you guys generally work with? I don't know how you would count that, in a year, or active projects. Give us a sense of sort of what the scope of the touch of CONNSTEP is.
Sure. Well, there's just under 4,000 manufacturers in the state of Connecticut. We usually do 2 to 250 projects during the year, and that's with multiple companies sometimes, and sometimes more projects with one. And we also probably visit on the average of 1,000 people, whether that's virtual now or we have a staff of 5 people that are in the field that are our business development and trusted advisors that cover the whole state and do visits and walkthroughs.
So what are some of the stuff? So you guys have a wide breadth. You maybe talk to almost 25% of all the manufacturers in Connecticut on a given year. What is CONNSTEP hearing about, the concerns of manufacturers now at this sort of stage of COVID, right? We sort of went through this big push, obviously up here in the Northeast. We had New York was the original epicenter. Connecticut was impacted pretty quickly behind that. We were shut down and pretty aggressively, pretty early. And we've sort of been feeling a little bit of, I think, the reopening. And now there's some fear, at least that's what I'm hearing, that we're seeing another massive resurgence, in some in the South and the West, Southern California, Texas, Florida, huge population centers. What are you hearing from manufacturers in Connecticut? What's their kind of posture? What are you guys hearing?
Sure. And I just read while I was sitting in the lobby waiting to come in, the latest report of the states that were added on to the governor's list of being, high risk states. And that'll be unfortunate as that happens, because I don't think any of our manufacturers can take, or other businesses can take, another shutdown or loss. What we're hearing from them, and we've done multiple surveys during this period, their attention is really on new sales and new markets. They've lost business. We don't have that many automotive manufacturers in the state. We have a lot in transportation and aerospace and shipbuilding, but those in automotive have no orders. That has been a shutdown completely. So where could they go into a new market? How can we help them with lead generation? How can we help them with getting their website up to attract more, businesses to be known? On the aerospace side, I think there's delays, certainly on the commercial side. I mean, everybody anticipates that that'll be a 2 or 3 year comeback at least. Those that are fortunate to be dealing on the defense side, there's a real need and there's demand in that market. So it's a real up and down depending on which sector that you're in and what you produce and how heavily you're invested in that 1 or 2 sectors. If you're 85% to 1 or 2 clients, certainly you're taking a real hit if it happens to be in a commercial aerospace market at this point. So when we ask them, it's a lot of diligent questions. First and foremost, how do they protect their employees? What is the right thing to do? Can we keep them informed? Which, we do with CBIA as one combined organization of making sure that what's coming out, state protocol, whether it's coming from CDC, that they know the guidance and procedures out there. But then internally, as far as their own business, after taking care of their employees, how are they going to continue to survive and maintain their business with losing a lot of business in the supply chain?
What are you doing? I think one of the things you said was really interesting there was of talking about the marketing, right? So I love the idea of leaning in and saying, where can we find new business? How can we expand our reach, get new customers? Can you elaborate a little bit on that? You talked about websites, talked about reach. What is CONNSTEP helping people do? And what have you guys seen that's working and maybe some things that aren't working?
Yeah, marketing sometimes is tough for a manufacturer because we go back to old methodology. Some of these companies are 5, 6 generations old, and so it was always about internal and external relationships, doing business with the people and the marketplace is not about that anymore. It's about pricing and getting something very quick. We do a program, a lead generation program. We work with that through one of our sister MEPs out of Pennsylvania. They have a skill. All the MEPs have different, really strong skill sets. Why it's working well as a national network. So they've got databases where they can find out, do a study of what a manufacturer is making, what could they possibly make in another sector, where those marketing channels are, and then start doing some lead generation and marketing with them to help them expand their business in some places. The other stuff that we did during COVID, as I mentioned, over 48 manufacturers retooling. That's another process that we and training that we can provide for them. The manufacturer's making in aerospace right now, making that product, can he make that same product in medical device? Can he move into another sector? So on that, we can help them with an assessment, first and foremost, to understand what is involved with that. It just doesn't happen.
No, sure. Different quality standards, different.
Absolutely. So we can help them say, these are the quality standards. You're now going to FDA versus what you were doing at AS 9100 standards, and what the pricing is and the resources needed to do that. And if that's affordable, then we go ahead and we help them get into that market. But, the decision first should be, how much is it and how much resources do I have? Because you can dive into some of these things and it's not going to pay off for you anyway. So sort of, make sure that you got a stage gate before you're going into it.
So going back to that lead gen concept, so a manufacturer is looking to drive more leads in the market they're in, could reach out to CONNSTEP and you guys would help connect them with the MEP and I think you said Pennsylvania and talk about like how to generate leads?
Sure. And well, that would be a lead generation project just for them specifically, but through our national network, we have MEP. You can get on, a customer can call and ask us, I'm making this and it's really, I could sell more of it if I had this piece of production or this material, and we can throw that out to the national system and see who's making that or doing that in another state and connect them with them. So again, back that channel marketing piece to get into another market that could be out of our state, could be overseas, help them with working with Department of Commerce here, that can they export, can they get into another market of exporting? So just trying to make those connections of that they don't know and they don't have the resources to do that on their own.
It's possible. I think it's important to people, that a lot of that may seem like out of the realm, out of the reach. Oh my God, who could ever do that? But it's possible. You've seen people do it and be successful.
Oh, many, many times. And the reach is sometimes right across the border that you've never even thought about in Massachusetts. So, yeah.
Oh, that's really fantastic. What else are you seeing or thinking about or think manufacturers should be thinking about as we're sort of getting into abnormalcy, preparing for, we thought, I think a lot of us that we'd be into recovery by the time July came around. Unfortunately, it looks like maybe there'll be a little bit of a longer road. So what are you seeing people could be doing to sort of keep their businesses together and get prepped up through this abnormalcy phase?
Well, certainly using the opportunity to train their staff. While they have some downtime, to make them a little bit more of a subject matter expert of where they are right now, move them to another situation. Disaster recovery and preparation for God forbid, something else will come down the road. It might not be another pandemic like this, but something else. So making sure that they have access to all their records, their cybersecurity, especially everything that they do is stored properly. Their layout is socially distanced, and making sure that they can get through this at another time and not have to retool their shop again. Looking at automation and things that they can do while people might not be, the workforce might not be able to get back. How can they do that with some new technology? And then as of yesterday, we're making a new program. We just met with a gentleman virtual from a company out of Canada, and we're going to work with him on a program about people outside of manufacturing, just like back office people that are going to work more remotely. So how do you manage? How do you measure productivity virtually versus on the shop floor? It's much easier when you're seeing it and you can count pieces and you know what people are doing and you have a standard shift that's coming in and out. So how do we set up some value stream mappings and some workforce management while a lot of people are working from home? Looks very, very different. It's sort of an idea that he has and has shared with us, and we've thought about it, and I think we're going to launch a program. It's in the agile market, which is your space.
Yeah.
But I think there's plenty of applications that can take on a continuous improvement concept.
So looking at sort of using the software development agile approach to manufacturing.
Yeah. And people.
Can you elaborate?
Well,
It's
it's really hard because but I think we're going to start with workforce management, and we're going to start with just how do we put some measures in, because it's very different, but yet there's practical approaches that this will work when people have people that are outside of the shop and not coming back in, especially in the back office space.
Yeah. That's a little bit more kind of in the business flow of things.
Yeah.
What are some of the things you think manufacturers aren't thinking about, whether it's working with CONNSTEP or just doing internally, from your experience or what you're hearing from the team at CONNSTEP, that people should be thinking about and should be taking advantage of? What are some of the hidden opportunities or things people might not think are possible that really are possible right now?
Yeah, I think technology scares a lot of our smaller manufacturers only because they don't know about it. And a lot of their learning is hands-on. Obviously, people who make things, that's how they learn as well. And so 4.0 is a little foreign to them. Robotics, it means bigger companies, but there's a lot of ways to automate a line in a small production. Stanley Black & Decker downtown Hartford has a nice display that's very visual, so a manufacturer can go in there and they can tour it and see, this is where my inventory comes in, and here's a small robot that might be able to move that, or down the production line, now this line is automated instead of done by hand. When people start seeing that, and I think that then they know it's applicable to them, and that's what we're there to help them. It's sort of that knowledge transfer that things seem very foreign if they're just dealing with a university or a lab. So we can make that bridge in between. So I think there's opportunity for them there. I also think that making sure they have a broader span on their marketplace than one or two clients. Different sectors as much as they can do, and certainly what they can do from virtual and learning and training of their teams. We took 2 of our programs that we normally do that are on site, and we made them virtual. 12 modules, probably at this point, 8 of them were possible to be made virtual. I think that people should be looking at virtual learning and then taking the hands-on experience as the next step inside, saving them some time, some money, and then the movement of people in and out of their shop too.
Should they be, are you guys in a position where if they're just interested and they're saying, everyone's talking about Industry 4.0, I 4.0, this new technology, is there an opportunity for them to just sort of call CONNSTEP and say, I don't know what this is. Can you help me even understand?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's when we'll bring in a couple of our subject matter experts that are trained on that, and they can explain, and that will what we also do, Ari, is when we know that there's a best practice of another company that's doing it well, we will take them there and show them and make an arrangement for them to do a tour. We do that a number of really good shops that are, pretty sophisticated in that, and they welcome their doors to their other colleagues as well.
Yeah, no, that's really important. And I think you talked about the Stanley Black & Decker Manufactory, which is really great. CCAT in East Hartford also has a bunch of stuff
Yes.
that's really cool. And there's been people on the podcast. One that comes to mind is Zendex Tool, who's a small
Absolutely, yeah.
manufacturer in
Yep.
Connecticut, who talked about CCAT and CONNSTEP and talked about how they were able to leverage their information with you, some grant money through CCAT plus some learning there to really implement some robotic welding to help provide more automation there. I think that's a great example of, a small manufacturer in Connecticut really leaning into the technology. I assume you have other stories like that left and right of people that have been able to do that.
Oh, sure. We'll take some of the larger companies to Tech Park, where there's larger partners. If somebody wants to learn about additive, we'll take them to CCAT. As somebody says, oh, could I, do some, I'm interested in additive or laser or other type of technologies, and we'll visually walk through, and that's how the learning starts. And then the next stage of that is how do they implement, and that's when we can help them hands-on inside.
Has CONNSTEP been in a position, this isn't as much fun to talk about, but the reality is a lot of manufacturers in Connecticut are facing push-outs, pushbacks, some real business challenges. Is CONNSTEP in a position to help people understand how they can manage their workforce in a way that's fiscally responsible? Obviously, ideally, we want to keep all of our employees, invest in training and upskilling, but sometimes the business doesn't support that. And so we have to look at, unfortunately, it could be furloughs or layoffs or some changes in structure. That could be new for some people or a challenge.
Sure.
And you want to make those changes taking into consideration, I would imagine, the people that you have, support them, support the business. We all know it will come back eventually. How do we not ruin the future, but we still have to get to the future? Is CONNSTEP in a position to help people look at those options?
Yeah, we do. And we partner. We've got a tool out called the Workforce Navigator, and it starts with an assessment and will point to various things, whether that's some training, whether that's some HR help, whether it's some of the things that you're saying, what do we do, that's more labor, whether that's furlough, layoff, temporary, seasonal. They have different cycles. So if we don't do it, we have people that are third parties. We work closely with the Manufacturing Innovation Fund and the board. We work, our CMC initiative that CONNSTEP and CBIA put together with all the manufacturing organizations throughout the state, which, we helped to write the legislation that put Colin Cooper in as the CMO. I know you've had him on here. We will link them to whether it's state government, Department of Labor, or people that are specially trained from us and bring them in as a third party and point them there. A lot of our work that we do is project-based, but a lot of it is consultation upfront, that we go in and spend time with people before we even decide what we're going to write for a project, because many times we go in, people think they know what their problem is, and it's really not. It's really a root cause of something else. So a lot of assessments.
Yeah, so if someone's just interested to see what's out there, there's so much CONNSTEP can connect you to. Just as someone's curious what's out there, they don't have to be afraid that if they pick up the phone and call you, it's like calling your lawyer and it's going to be every 15 minutes they're getting a bill. There's an opportunity to have a conversation and understand what's going on and how there could be some synergies and advantages before they have to commit financial resources.
Oh, yeah. We start with a visit from the business development people to find out their needs, and then we will then even bring in a subject matter expert, an engineer who normally does that work for another consultation. So part of our work with the state and part of our work on the federal level is certainly for that. That's some of our, I don't want to call it free service, but that is, we're not like that. Yeah.
Don't be afraid. Pick up the phone.
Yeah,
we're here to help.
Plenty of opportunity. And if not, link you with the right person to be able to do that, even if it's not. And we've got, we're pretty well connected with other people that we don't do. and
That's
even take
so
the time to make the visit with another person as well.
That's fantastic. And that's
Yeah.
so important. One of the goals of the podcast, right, is to build that sense of community. We have over 4,000 manufacturers in Connecticut, and we need to work together, right? We need to look at Connecticut as a team that's working and going into the global economy. It's great to have CONNSTEP. And I think this dovetails really nicely into the affiliation you alluded to earlier between CONNSTEP and CBIA. So just really quickly, if anyone doesn't know either A, what the affiliation is, or even maybe what CBIA is, maybe you could just very quickly talk about, sort of how this affiliation came to be and what it means.
Sure. Well, reaching more and being collaborative are two of the most, essential pieces of why we came together. And I know you've had Joe Brennan on here, president of CBIA, and new president coming in, Christy Patima, from a manufacturing world. We wanted to reach more. The landscape in Connecticut has shrunk a little bit. We wanted to keep growing. So 2 years ago, Joe and I talked about what was the similarities in the two organizations and what were the differences that we can fill some of the gaps. So we'll talk to a manufacturer, and certainly, it's during our discovery phase, they'll be saying taxes, FMLA, whatever it is on the legislative side of things, which we do not do. But now I have an affiliation that has a voice to industry and has people that work on legislation. Would that be energy or things that I just mentioned? They have a large member of their base. They're the largest industry membership group in the state. A large percentage is manufacturing. So that gives us, while they're out talking on membership and offering some value-added services to their members, now CONNSTEP could also do the same thing, whether they're a manufacturer or even another industry, for some type of process improvement and efficiencies. It all transcends into different sectors as well. So we joined. It'll be 2 years this July. It just happened, and it's been great. We've been able to reach more, do more, as I mentioned before, get people to join, like the CMC, for all the manufacturing associations that can service all over their clients and their members. So we're hitting the state, and legislatively, the CMC has been sort of speaking as one voice. I mentioned Colin Cooper. So all these things have come out of the birth of the two of us joining together. And now there's another association with us, Ready CT, on the education side. So we're thinking if we can help everybody at the same time and be more collectively joined to be able to say, I don't want to say one-stop shopping, but here, when you have a need, you can call. And the same model, call first. There's plenty of people to talk to you before. CBIA has hotlines, and they've been busy as heck, as you can imagine, during this pandemic. So good services to the people in Connecticut, again, making them fiscally sound and adding to the economic base in our state.
It's really terrific. And I want to actually circle back really briefly. We've talked about it on the podcast before, but you never know who hears and who picks up which sections. But you've talked about the CMC twice, which shouldn't be confused with CMMC, the cybersecurity framework.
Yes, yeah.
CMC is its own thing. And I want you to talk about that. But before I do, I want to sort of lay it out like this. Anyone who's been in Connecticut business for any period of time has probably heard the term alphabet soup or the 169 towns and all this stuff. And there's been so much talk over the years. And I've probably been in business in Connecticut for only 20 years, but which I guess sounds like a long time. But I've been hearing about it all the time. It's these people don't talk to those people, and I think that's really changing. And the CMC, the affiliation between CONNSTEP and CBIA, some of the stuff you're talking about really speaks to not just the dream of unification and collaboration, but the reality of it. So maybe just talk briefly about what the CMC is, how it came to be, and why you think it's so important that we have an organization like that.
Sure. It's the Connecticut Manufacturers Collaborative. And as mentioned, that there's 7 associations outside of CONNSTEP and CBIA, and we're not an association. CBIA is for all businesses, so not just manufacturing. CONNSTEP is not a membership organization. We're client services. So we thought, how could we bring all the associations, the New Haven group, the Waterbury group, so if we had everyone in these organizations who have major memberships throughout the state, we'd be talking to mostly every manufacturer who belonged. So we can share, we can get data, we can survey, and we can find out what is, on their minds from their membership groups and look as one hub to talk as one voice. You add the expertise of CBIA on the legislative side. Eric Brown has been instrumental on that, being able to write up the legislation as we talk about workforce development in the right terms to present. We were able to get a meeting with then Governor-elect Lamont to say who we are, and to the manufacturing caucus, to the legislatives. It just makes it clearer to them to have one group coming, and they know that the information from this group is coming from all resources in the state than individually. It saves time, it's efficient, it's more verified information because we're hitting everyone, and solving things that are really burning issues to the manufacturer. A big piece, as I mentioned, was to ask this new administration if they would fund a office for a chief manufacturing officer, because we wanted someone who had industry experience to be able to speak and sort of be the conduit between what industry needs and what is being said through legislators who might not be involved or know what the manufacturers need. So that came to fruition, and Colin Cooper's in that position. So he joins us every week on calls, and we talk about all things, issues in the business today versus COVID, workers' comp issues, tax-related issues, you name it. And it's working so far.
There's no question. I think we've all felt, we business leaders, especially progressive, forward-thinking business leaders who want to see Connecticut be ever more strong and successful, have said for a long time, we're going to be stronger together than apart. Mm-hmm. And I think the CMC sort of demonstrates that, not just the fact that we're doing it, but the fact that it's been successful. And I think you can point to two major achievements, one being the chief manufacturing officer, which you mentioned twice, which I think is a tremendous sign of what you can do when we're together. And the other one is one I don't think any of us could have thought about ahead of time. But if you take a step back and look at the response from COVID, you alluded to the fact that manufacturing has been essential from day one, which was beneficial because we were able to keep our businesses going, but also had a lot of question marks. Mm-hmm. We need to have people on site. We can't all work remotely. How do we prevent people from getting sick so that they're healthy, so our businesses can operate, so we can meet customer demand? And all these questions were flying around. And the CMC was a tremendous hub from representatives that went from different groups. You mentioned NHMA, SMA, EMA, ACM, and others. And what's funny is me being involved with those groups individually, seeing the information going up and new information coming back, and those resources being used. I think the CMC in a very short period of time has demonstrated how this collaboration can really make manufacturers successful and really boost Connecticut's economy.
Yeah, and it's it's going on nationally too. I mean, everybody in the U.S. is looking to regionalize or do something as it's more competitive. So this isn't not to have some of the businesses go away and now everybody belongs to this. This is, how do we get a bigger voice so we grow? Mm-hmm. We're trying to grow the pie to have more pieces versus trying to slice it up, differently. Actually, tomorrow, my team, Eric Brown and myself and a couple from my team are going to be having a virtual meeting with the New Jersey MEP because they're looking legislatively to do this as a model in New Jersey. So it's not just us. Other people want to do it, and it's a better way to travel. And as you said, during some of these CMC meetings, someone in Waterbury would say, I don't know what to do with this. Somebody has decided that they can't wear a mask. And this was right at the beginning when masks were coming out. Did they have to prove that they have something that they can't? Can we allow, can we ask them, please show a doctor's note or whatever? So we bring these type of questions up. And then certainly, on these calls, Joe would find out what that most current legislation is. We would write it up. We'd post it on the sites and everybody would share in it. And it really helped not to have to do so much digging individually,
Yeah, listen, saving
the
time
alphabet
is
soup,
money,
as
and
you
reducing
said.
strip, and
Yeah.
and being able to go to the source, and then I don't know, you wouldn't even know where to go find the legislation or how to get it together, and to
Yep.
have you guys doing that's really tremendous. So we're sort of wrapping up on our time here, but I just wonder if you maybe want to share some of what you're seeing and thinking about. You talked about something I talk about a lot. We've talked about on this podcast the 4 stages, right? Change, abnormalcy, recovery, and thrive. And I think we're pretty squarely into abnormalcy, and hoping to find that the shoots of recovery and get to thrive. And just share maybe your thoughts on what you see turning the corner, what manufacturers should be thinking about of recovery and thrive. Any kind of closing thoughts you may have on that.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we don't have another. I'm pretty proud of what the state has done. I mean, when you can say you're one of 2 states that is not on the rise, we've kept our cool about a lot of things, and I think that's really important. And I think saying that, I hope manufacturers will keep their clear heads about it too. They've got a lot of tough challenges to face, and maybe some of that is more partnership too with people in their supply chain. We tend to remove ourselves and not see and look and see what's visually going down to the next stage. So maybe to do more partnerships with people that they want to sell to, as well as people that supply to them. How do they make some efficiencies? How do they do more collaboration so they're not spinning their wheels? How do they use more resources like CONNSTEP, like CBIA, to tap in to say, here's the value that I get from these organizations. That's what we're there for. I guess some thinking out of the box and not it's very easy to go back to old ways, but be on the forefront of what happened when any disaster happens. What did you lose? And don't go back to the same trait, and be forward thinking and think about safety, your people. And I think people should be paying attention to cybersecurity. I do. I think it's a big one. It could be a pandemic as big as this, and it's something. Again, it's something that's usually imposed on a manufacturer by an OEM, and then their supply chain, their tier ones coming down to them. Don't wait. Be a little bit out of the gate. Use the time to be protected, because when it hits, then you're in another disaster, and recovery is pretty hard on that end. So.
Yeah, there's no question about it. Obviously, in my other non-podcast host life, we do a lot in that area. And, we've seen a number of manufacturers, unfortunately, this year, including one very recently, right in the middle of the pandemic, got hit with a massive cybersecurity breach. And it's just, to add that on top of everything else is just, put you to the breaking point. So I'd like to maybe end on a little bit of a higher, a different note. I'm just doing this on the fly here. But, we're headed into the summer here, or I guess we're actually in the summer right now. And I think some people, especially when there's so much going on, there's all this pressure to perform, find new markets, keep people employed, hard decisions to make. Sometimes we get stuck in the wheel. And I think it can always be good to get some perspective and maybe take a step back and take a breather and give yourself time to relax. And so I'm going to ask you, Bonnie, this summer, we obviously aren't traveling probably the same as we used to. Do you have any plans to take a step back, take some time off, get some perspective, be with family, relax? And what are you going to do to make that happen?
Yeah, it's probably, car travel, and it's probably with family. I feel like Joe and I just talked about this the other day, that, things are slowing down. People aren't looking for the PPE like they did. Not everything is such a rush. And, I used to work as a tax accountant. I'm a CPA by background, and this reminded me the past couple of weeks of the come down after tax season. Like you're just going for months, and then all of a sudden you just sort of need to recharge. So I think we all need to recharge. I think a lot of the manufacturers do too. So I'm just looking for family time, a little breathing time.
You guys have a beach house or a lake house?
No, I wish I did. I wish I
Yeah.
did, but I've got a backyard and some
That's
beautiful woods to look at, and we've been staying home a lot. I'm still a little bit skeptical about going out. I haven't been out to dinner yet. Maybe this weekend I'm going to venture out a little bit in some outdoor dining, something like that, because I think it's important that we get back to the normal way of routine too. We have to at some point, as long as we're respectful of how we do it. So
baby steps towards recovery.
Yeah.
Recovery, baby
Yeah.
steps. You got to crawl
Yeah.
before you walk before you run.
Absolutely.
Run before you fly. So we'll build it back. Well, listen, I have confidence that working together, leveraging the resources like CONNSTEP, CBIA, CMC, leaning into our challenges and looking at the opportunities, I have no doubt that Connecticut manufacturing will in very short order be thriving just like it was only 3 or 4 short months ago.
I do. It might look very different and it might take different processes and look a little different, but I believe that, in anything you can learn out of a bad opportunity, you can, make that lemonade out of those lemons.
That's right.
Versus being, so I'm with you. I think we're going to come back and
Well,
come
we'll
back well.
get you back on and toast us some lemonade in the
I
very
hope
near
so.
future.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. I really appreciate you coming on today. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Ari. Great. Thank you.
Made in America with Ari Santiago is brought to you by IT Direct.
As always, thanks so much for tuning in. I definitely want your feedback and hope you subscribe. But what I want the most is to build a community where we learn and grow with each other. I hope you're getting a lot of value out of the time we're spending together. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you next time.